And so we come to our Supreme Court. In my second book, Death of Innocence, I descend into the issues of the court because I have to. Because the more I got involved with this, the more I saw what the courts are doing, the more I'm accompanying people, and the last two people I accompanied were innocent. And you can see for yourself. You don't have to believe me. You read the stories of Dobie Gillis Williams. You read the stories of Joseph Odell. And know this, that when you come to their execution and you watch them die through your imagination in reading this book, that no jury who decided about their deaths ever heard the evidence that you're going to have, because they didn't know a jailhouse informer was lying. They didn't know, in Dobie's case, that the husband was the only witness of this woman who was killed in her bathroom, who supposedly said as her last words, and this is only from the husband, "A black man killed me. He came through the bathroom window." No evidence of Dobie's blood or fingerprints or anything in that bathroom. Nothing. When you read about the forensic evidence and what they did to this young black man with an IQ of 65 and railroaded him through with an all-white jury, and every court in the United States upheld that his constitutional rights had not been violated. The Supreme Court of the United States, the Fifth Circuit. When you read about the courts and what's happened with the courts, their reliance on procedural bars, and forget about the issues of justice that are in the case. You filed it one day too late. You look and see, the quote I put at the beginning of the book was Jesus saying to the lawyers, "You strain out gnats and you swallow Campbells," while neglecting the weightier issues of justice and mercy in the courts. You see how procedural bars and finality in cases trumps justice. I didn't know anything about legalisms. I didn't know anything about courts. But I've been in there with people and watching them die and seeing how this thing works. Our Supreme Court of the United States tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock could abolish the death penalty. But how are they interpreting the Constitution? How are they interpreting it? This rigid interpretation of, in the second part of the book, I mean, I take on Justice Antonin Scalia because he's so, and he's spoken at conferences, and he so has put out there his view. If the framers said it and they allowed it, who are we to claim evolving standards of decency that we can change it? So don't tell me they're mentally retarded, he said, as though you can't find out anything about mental retardation that the framers didn't know. Don't tell me they're juveniles. Don't tell me they were poor. They know right from wrong, and if the framers allowed it, we got to do it. And he dissented in the Atkins decision not to kill mentally retarded people. It took up how many? Dobie was killed 2 years before Atkins. If he had lived long enough, he would not have been killed because his IQ was 65. The cutoff point, you got to measure it, was 70, and Dobie would be alive. And it took our Supreme Court, well, maybe you shouldn't kill mentally retarded people. And juveniles. You could be 18 in the United States and you couldn't buy alcohol or tobacco. You couldn't sign a legal contract. You couldn't join the army, and you couldn't witness an execution. But you could be executed for a crime you did younger than 18. And today it's life without parole for people, some of whom were 14 or 15 when they did crimes and are tried in adult courts and are put into prison for the rest of their lives. What happened to us? But it's very parallel to slavery. Who's in touch with prisoners? Who knows what's going on in prisons? Who knows what's going on in death row? Except those of us who are witnesses who've been, as we say in Louisiana, drug in. Or like the prophet Jeremiah, seduced by God, get sucked into this thing. And my own story, I'm a bona fide Catholic nun. I mean, I was teaching in a parochial school. I mean, I was a director of religious ed. I mean, I was praying. I was prayerful and holy and good. And I thought God was the one supposed to solve all these big problems. And our mother house abutted one of the major housing projects in New Orleans where struggling African Americans who were our servants when I grew up as a young girl. My daddy was a successful lawyer. This is Jim Crow segregated Louisiana. I thought black people were happy with their own kind, you know? I didn't know they were like suffering. Spirituality can separate us because look in the churches as people just like us and our socioeconomic class. Because churches are geographically located, we look around as people just like us. And the gospel of Jesus is so radical. Poor Jesus. Poor Jesus. I just found out about these seed faith mega churches and what they're doing to people. You know what seed faith is? Here are all these people, poor, don't have enough money for the rent. And here's a preacher saying, you worried about your rent? You worried? You trust God. You put your seed faith into this envelope and support the ministry of this church and your rent's going to be paid. And there are all these people getting sucked into this and giving their money over to these churches. Seed faith. And Jesus wants you to be prosperous. I myself took a while to discover the Jesus of justice, the Jesus who hung with the poor, the Jesus who was with the marginated, because I myself, I didn't think religion had anything. I thought religion just meant be charitable to everybody and nice to everybody. And Mom and Daddy were always nice to Ellen and Jesse. Ellen worked in the house. Jesse worked in the yard. I didn't even know their last names. They were kind. And Daddy did. He was a lawyer. He helped Jesse. He helped him get a good job, helped him buy a house. I didn't know about justice. And the waking up is such a grace to wake up and to get it and then to be involved. We are privileged to be awake. And consciousness and awakening brings responsibility.